Hi guys, Phil here from the Mindful Mover, and today we're going to show you one of our planche push-up progressions, the leaned forward push-up. And of course, we're going to apply accommodating resistance so that we can get the most intensity out of each repetition possible. When you're doing your leaned forward push-ups, you want to make sure that you emphasize 3 parts of the movement so you can get the widest range of gains possible and the most intensity out of each of your reps. The 3 parts are the isometric hold, the involuntary eccentric, and the grinding concentric. If you get those 3 parts down, you're going to have a great lean forward push-up. So let's start with part number 1, the isometric. What you're going to do is get into push-up position. You're going to turn your toes over so that your toes are facing the ground, and you're going to lean forward with your arms straight really far. You want to lean forward so that a 3 to 5 second hold is very, very intense. This part's really important so that you make your static planche gains. Part number 2 is the involuntary eccentric. So what you're going to do is bend your elbows, and if you are leaned far enough forward, when you bend your elbows, that will force you to fall due to the lack of leverage and the load. If you don't fall, you'll simply lean forward more, and if you fall too fast, you'll lean forward less. But basically, it's going to force you to fall, and what you're going to do is, as you're falling, push against that fall as hard as possible, like you want to go back up. That's going to make that eccentric really hard. It's going to make that eccentric involuntary. You're going to get a lot of intensity out of that, and that's part of the rep. Number 3 is the grinding concentric. So when you reach the bottom, you're going to begin pushing up. Now, if you leaned far enough forward during the eccentric, you're probably going to get stuck. And what you're going to do when you get stuck is bring your shoulders back just enough to get you moving. It should not be easy. You shouldn't explode up. You should just start grinding it out. Now, if you get stuck again, repeat that process. Bring your shoulders back just enough to let you grind out the rep. If at any point it starts feeling easy, start bringing the shoulders back forward and make it more difficult. Watch that top 1/4 area. That part tends to feel easier as you're going back up. You probably need to lean forward around there. Now we've got the form down, let's go over some key notes to make sure that you get aboard the gains train. Keynote number 1, when you're doing that initial isometric, make sure that you lean far and you keep your elbows locked. If you bend your elbows, then you might not get the transfer over to the actual static planche hold. You want to get all your gains, so make sure your initial isometric has your elbows locked out straight so you get the free gains. Keynote number 2, this exercise is even more effective if you perform it with your hands elevated so you can get a deeper range of motion. So that means what you can do is perform it on something like an elevated surface, for example, 2 bar stools or 2 chairs. You can perform it on something like rings, or you can perform it on something like parallettes. Anything that lets you elevate your hands will work perfectly. Keynote there for that keynote, when you elevate your hands, make sure you elevate your feet a bit too, so that you stay kind of in a good, nice, lean forward push-up position. Don't let your hands be super high elevated and your feet be super low. It'll mess up the exercise. Keynote number 3, leaning so far forward on your hands can start to put a little pain on your wrist. If that happens, don't worry. What you can do is one of 2 things. 1, turn your hands out either sideways or backwards. Just keep in mind that when you do that, it's probably going to make the movement more difficult. The other thing you can do is perform the movement on either parallettes or rings. That way, it helps to save your wrist and let them recover. A great strategy to use is to do a couple reps on the ground so that it helps you build your wrist strength and mobility, and then when your wrists get fatigued, swap over to parallettes and rings so you can get the rest of the body still gaining while also stay away from chronic wrist pain. That way, over time, your wrist will get stronger and stronger and stronger. Eventually, you probably won't have to switch anymore. Keynote number 4. Make sure that you aren't dropping down to the bottom of the movement. So when you lean forward, you should be leaning forward enough where when you bend your elbows, gravity plus the load forces you down and you resist it, but it doesn't turn into a fall that's so fast you fall and hit your face on the ground and break something. Avoid the terminal velocity rep. Keynote number 5, no rocket ship reps. So when you're pushing back up, you shouldn't be able to explode the way up. You should be leaned far enough forward that when you're pushing up, the entire range of motion is a grind. No points where you can explode up like a rocket ship. So that right there is how to perform the lean forward push-up, and that will get you aboard the gain train towards your first planches and planche push-ups. Give it a try, get aboard the gain train, woot woot, stay tuned for more.